If you're a high-achieving woman who's exhausted by stress, stuck in constant conflict, and tired of being overlooked in the exact rooms where you know you were born to lead, then this podcast is for you. So here's your host, Pallavi Jain.
Welcome back to Her Boss Brain, the space for high-achieving leaders who are ready to move from stress to success by leading from within. I'm your host, Pallavi, and on this podcast, we talk about how to activate your boss brain on self-start by making conscious withdrawals from your inner ATM. Because leadership doesn't begin with doing more or when everything outside is calm. In fact, quite the opposite. When everything is changing around you, when pressure hits, in those moments, it begins from within. When you arrive, take responsibility and make a conscious choice. Peace comes when you realize that everything that's out of your control should be out of your mind. Let me say that again. Everything that's out of your control should be out of your mind. Because resistance is expensive. It costs us focus, emotional stability, and clarity. And most high performers don't realize how much cognitive energy they are leaking every single day fighting reality. Today's message may land a little more reflective than analytical, but it's deeply practical. This is about acceptance, not as a spiritual idea, as a leadership skill. Now, life throws different things at us at different times. Some we like, some we don't care about, some we absolutely hate. And because of how we are wired, our brains over-amplify what we hate. Negative bias is not a character flaw. It's survival wiring. So what happens then is we replay the meeting, we replay the comment, we replay the disappointment, we replay that this shouldn't have happened. And while we're mentally time traveling into the past, real life is unfolding right in front of us. We miss it. Not because we are incapable, but because we are resisting what already is. We're happy when life unfolds the way we want. We are upset when it doesn't. But here's the truth. Everything will not always unfold around you the way you want. So now what? There's something I often hear from high-performing individuals. If I accept, I'm giving up. If I accept, I'm not trying hard enough. If I accept, I lose my edge. I want you to pause for a second and really hear that. Is that true? Is acceptance the same as passivity? No. Acceptance is not killing your drive. It's redirecting your energy. When you don't accept what already happened, you argue with reality, and that argument drains you. Let me make this real. There was a time in my life when I lost my job, and I was not prepared for how deeply that shook me. On the surface, I told myself I was fine, I'm strong, I'll bounce back. But internally, I was spiraling. I kept replaying how everything unfolded, the conversation, the tone, the timing, and I kept asking, why did this happen to me? I've never intentionally harmed anyone. Did I say something wrong? Am I the problem? And that question, am I the problem, started quietly eroding my confidence. I began overanalyzing my personality, my communication, my decisions. I wasn't just disappointed. I was personalizing the entire event. And here's what I didn't realize at that time. I was completely absorbed in resistance. Not resistance to the company, not resistance to the people, resistance to reality. The job was gone. That was the fact. But mentally, I was still arguing with it. This shouldn't have happened. This is unfair. This doesn't make sense. And while I was doing that, life was moving forward. Opportunities were out there. Conversations could have been happening, right? But I was stuck because I lacked acceptance. I was burning mental energy trying to rewrite something that had already happened. And the more I replayed it, the more my nervous system stayed activated. Hurt, defensive, disappointed. And I lost weeks in that state. Weeks. Now, if I had paused and said, this is what it is. Not, I like it. Not, I agree with it. Just, this is what it is. Everything would have shifted. Because once you accept reality, a new question becomes available. Okay, what's in my control now? Instead of asking, why me? I could have asked, now what? That shift is powerful. Acceptance would not have made me passive. It would have made me strategic. It would have preserved my confidence. It would have prevented me from taking something personally that may not have been personal at all. And that's the trap. When something happens that feels painful or unjust, we make it about our identity. But events are data. They are not verdicts on our worth. And the moment I stopped personalizing it, stopped arguing with it, and allowed myself to feel disappointed without living there, that's when I regained control. That's when I moved from self pity to self leadership. I felt the emotion, but what I did was I refused to stay stuck in it. And that's the difference between resistance and acceptance. Acceptance says, this happened. And then leadership says, and now I choose how I respond. And that logical clarity stops the mental time travel. And this is exactly where the ATM framework becomes powerful. A, arrive. Arrive in the present moment. Stop fighting what already happened. Stop replaying it. Stop negotiating with the past. Arrival interrupts resistance. T, take responsibility. Not responsibility for the event, but responsibility for your response. You cannot control every outcome, but you can control your posture toward it. You can control whether you stay in victim mode or shift into empowered mode. And then the last step, M, make a conscious choice. Now ask, is there something I can do about this? If yes, take aligned action. If no, can I consciously release it? Acceptance frees up stuck energy, anger, blame, resentment, jealousy. Why me? This shouldn't have happened. That energy now becomes available again. And when energy is no longer trapped in resistance, you move from problem focused to solution focused, from reactive to intentional, from emotional leakage to boss brain activation. I have a challenge for you. Before I give you the challenge, I want you to understand something critical first. Every time you repeat the story of what hurt you, every time you retell the disappointment, the unfairness, the betrayal, the frustration, you are not just talking, you are wiring. You are strengthening neural networks in your brain. The brain learns through repetition. So when you keep revisiting the same personal hurt story, you are literally solidifying that pathway. You're making it easier and faster for your brain to go down that same emotional road again. Think about it like walking through a cornfield. The first time you walk through, it's difficult. The second time, it's easier. By the 10th time, there is a visible path. Eventually, that becomes the default route. And that's what happens when you constantly rehearse what went wrong. Your brain begins to default to that path. And because of its negative bias, it actually prefers it. The brain is wired to scan for threat, unfairness, rejection. So when you feed it those stories, it says, this is familiar. Let's stay here. And here's the problem. That path does not lead to solutions. It leads to emotional reactivation. Every retelling reignites the emotion. Every complaint re-triggers the nervous system. And every replay keeps you anchored in the past. It feels like processing, but often it's rehearsing. And rehearsing pain is not the same as healing pain. And now here's the shift. The moment you stop feeding the negative narrative, something interesting happens. The brain doesn't immediately know where to go. The trigger may still arise, but without repetition, without rehearsal, it begins to weaken. Neural pathways that are not reinforced start to lose dominance. Emotions that are not refed start to pass. You'll be surprised at how much negativity we speak in a single day. Not because we're bad people, but because we're unconsciously reinforcing familiar mental routes. If you don't believe me, I want you to do this experiment for the next 3 days. So for the next 3 days, when you're on the phone with someone, talking to somebody on the phone, You are not allowed to talk about your problems, and you're not allowed to speak negatively about a third person who is not on the call. Okay, that's it. You can talk about anything else, just not those two things. And then observe what happens. Most likely, you may find you struggle to hold a conversation because we bond over complaint more than we realize. However, if you have a conversation that actually flows effortlessly, no complaints, no negativity, no bonding over frustration, and yet it feels energizing, if that happens, I want you to pause and really analyze it. That person is aligned with your gifts, aligned with your values, and aligned with your nervous system. They're not connecting with you through pain. They're connecting with you through possibility. They expand the parts of you that are strong. They inspire clarity instead of fueling resentment. That is your tribe. The person who bring out your grounded confidence, who amplify your strengths, who reinforce who you are becoming, not who you were hurt by. Notice the difference in how your body feels. Notice the difference in your thinking after the call ends. And then make a conscious choice. Move closer to the relationships that expand your positive wiring and gently reduce time in the ones that rehearse your pain. That is not rejection, that is alignment. Now, I want to be very clear that there will be moments in life that are genuinely hard to accept. Acceptance does not mean bypassing emotion. Feel the sadness, feel the anger, feel the disappointment, but don't get upset at yourself for getting upset. Give yourself grace when it's due, and then have an honest reflection. Is there action required? Is there learning here? Is there support I need? Or is this something I'm choosing to hold on to long after it has expired? If it truly is outside your control, the most powerful leadership move you can make is this: I accept it and I release it. That is not weakness, that is cognitive discipline. There is something deeply liberating about not arguing with reality. When you stop fighting what already is, you create space. Space for clarity, intentional action, and most importantly, space for new perspective. Sometimes we are so close to our partial frame that we cannot see the bigger picture unfolding. But the moment you accept, you elevate. You move above the drama, above the emotional noise, above the resistance. And from that place, you lead from within.
So that's it for today's episode of our Boss Brain podcast. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes will win a chance in a grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 private VIP day with Pallavi herself. Be sure to head on over to her bossbrainpodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Pallavi's gift and join us next time.